"Mom, you're moving to the garage. My mother-in-law needs your bedroom for her extended visit." My son Ryan said this while I was still recovering from surgery. I was sitting on the edge of my own bed, surgical bandages tight across my stomach, moving like an old woman because every step hurt. I'm 74 years old and I own this house. My name is Dorothy Chen. 3 days ago, I had my gallbladder removed. The doctor said I needed rest, quiet, and time to heal. Instead, I got my son telling me to sleep in the garage like a piece of old furniture nobody wants anymore. I looked at Ryan standing in my bedroom doorway. My bedroom. The same bedroom I'd shared with his father for 35 years before cancer took him. The same bedroom where I'd nursed Ryan through childhood fevers and nightmares. The same bedroom that was legally, completely, and undeniably mine. "The garage, Ryan?" I asked, my voice still hoarse from the anesthesia. "You want me to sleep in the garage?" He had the decency to look uncomfortable for about 2 seconds. Then that look disappeared, replaced by the expression I'd been seeing more and more lately, the look that said I was an inconvenience in my own life. "Mom, be reasonable. Francine is used to luxury accommodations. She can't sleep on the couch, and Linda already moved all her stuff into the guest room." Francine, Ryan's mother-in-law. A woman I'd met exactly twice in the 2 years since Ryan married Linda. A woman who looked at my house like it was a budget motel that would have to do. "And where exactly would I sleep in the garage?" "We bought you an air mattress. It's really comfortable, and the garage has heat." An air mattress. For a 74-year-old woman recovering from surgery. I stared at my son. Really looked at him. When had his face become so cold? When had his eyes lost that warmth I remembered from when he was little and would crawl into this very bed after a bad dream? "Ryan," I said slowly, "this is my house." "I know, Mom, but we're family. Families help each other out." Family. The word he used every time he needed something. The word that had somehow become a weapon instead of a comfort. Let me tell you how we got here. Let me tell you about the past 2 years that led to my son telling me to sleep in my own garage. It started the day Ryan showed up at my door with a suitcase and tears in his eyes. "Mom, I need a place to stay, just temporarily, just until I get back on my feet." That was 2 years ago. His divorce from his first wife had been messy, expensive. He'd lost the house, most of his savings, and according to him, his will to live. As his mother, what was I supposed to do? Turn him away? So I said yes. Of course I said yes. "Just for a few weeks," he promised. "Just until I find an apartment." The few weeks became months. The months became a year. And then Linda arrived. "Mom, I want you to meet someone special." Linda was 42, with perfect blonde hair and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. She was recently divorced too, with expensive taste and no visible means of supporting it. "Your home is so charming, Dorothy," she said during that first dinner. So quaint. Quaint. The word people use when they mean small and outdated, but I'll pretend to like it. Within 6 months, Linda had moved in too. "Just temporarily, Mom, just until we save enough for our own place." But somehow, my house stopped being my house. It became their house where I happened to live. My sewing room became Linda's office. My quiet mornings became their loud phone calls for work. My simple dinners became elaborate meals I was expected to cook for 3 people instead of 1. The grocery bills tripled overnight. "Mom, we eat organic now. It's better for everyone." Organic everything. Grass-fed beef, free-range chicken, artisanal bread that cost $8 a loaf, all on my pension, all because we're family. The utility bills exploded. "Mom, we upgraded your cable and internet. You'll love all the new channels." Channels I never watched. Internet speeds I didn't need. A monthly bill that went from $90 to $340 overnight for services I never requested. But the worst part wasn't the money. The worst part was watching myself disappear in my own home. Mom, we're having friends over tonight. Maybe you could eat dinner in your room. Mom, Linda's using the washing machine all day Sunday. Can you do your laundry another time? Mom, we need to borrow your car again. You don't really go anywhere anyway, right? Borrow. The word Ryan used when he took my car for the 4th time that week. His DUI had suspended his license 8 months ago, but somehow that became my problem to solve. And through it all, I told myself this was temporary. I told myself they were going through a hard time. I told myself this was what good mothers do, until yesterday when Ryan asked me for $8,000. It's an investment opportunity, Mom. A sure thing. I'll pay you back in 6 months with interest. $8,000. Half of my life savings. Money I'd saved for emergencies, for medical bills, for the funeral I wouldn't want to burden anyone with. And like a fool, I gave it to him. You're the best, Mom. This is going to change everything for us. 24 hours later, he was telling me to sleep in the garage. But what he said next made something inside me snap completely. Mom, stop being unreasonable. You're old and need less space anyway. Francine is used to luxury accommodations. The garage has heat. I looked at my son, really looked at him. This man who had lived in my house for 2 years without paying a penny in rent. This man who had borrowed my car, eaten my food, run up my bills, and taken my money. This man who was now telling me I needed less space in my own home. I was old and needed less space. The words hit me like a physical blow, not because they were cruel, though they were, but because I realized in that moment that my own son saw me as less than human, less deserving of comfort, of dignity, of basic respect. I was furniture to be moved around, a convenient bank account with legs, an old woman who should be grateful for whatever scraps of consideration he threw my way. You know what, Ryan? I said, my voice steadier than I felt. You're absolutely right. Someone in this house needs less space. He smiled, thinking he'd won. He had no idea what was coming. That night, while Ryan and Linda slept peacefully in my house, I sat at my kitchen table at 3 a.m. The surgical pain was manageable with medication, but the pain in my heart was something no pill could touch. I opened my laptop. The screen's glow was the only light in the kitchen, casting shadows that seemed to dance with the ghosts of better times. I had work to do. First, I needed to understand exactly what rights I had in my own home. I pulled up Google and typed with shaking fingers, "How to evict adult children from your house." The results were eye-opening. Turns out, when your adult children don't pay rent, don't have a lease, and aren't on the deed, they're not tenants, they're guests. And guests can be asked to leave at any time, even family guests, especially family guests who think you need less space in your own home. I kept reading. In my state, I could give a 24-hour notice to vacate for guests who had overstayed their welcome. I didn't need a reason. I didn't need a court order. I just needed to be the legal owner of the property, which I was. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out the house deed. Dorothy Chen, sole owner. No Ryan, no Linda, just me. My hands weren't shaking anymore. I found a template for a notice to vacate and started typing, "To Ryan Chen and Linda Chen, you are hereby notified that your tenancy of the above-described premises is hereby terminated. You are required to quit and surrender possession of the premises to the owner within 24 hours. As I typed, I heard a sound from upstairs. Linda's laugh, loud and sharp, cutting through the silence. She was probably on the phone with Francine, planning how to rearrange my house to accommodate her mother's luxury needs. My house, where I was supposed to sleep in the garage. I kept typing. Next, I called my bank's 24-hour customer service line. At 3:30 in the morning, I changed all my passwords, all my security questions, all my account access information. Ryan had been helping me with online banking for months. That help was about to end. Then I did something I probably should have done 2 years ago. I opened a new checking account at a different bank, an account Ryan had never seen, never heard of, never helped me with. I transferred most of my savings there, leaving just enough in the old account to cover my basic bills. $8,000. The money Ryan had borrowed yesterday for his sure thing investment. I had a feeling that money was never coming back, but at least he wouldn't be getting any more. At 4 a.m., I found a locksmith company that offered emergency services. 24 hours a day, they said. Perfect. I need my locks changed today, I told the dispatcher. All of them. Front door, back door, garage door. Is this an emergency situation, ma'am? I looked around my kitchen. My kitchen where Linda's expensive vitamins covered the counter, where Ryan's craft beer filled half my refrigerator, where my own food had been pushed to the back to make room for their organic everything. Yes, I said, this is definitely an emergency. The locksmith could be there at 8 a.m., perfect timing. At 5 a.m., I found something that made my blood run cold. I was looking up property law when I decided to search for something else. Louis Vuitton luggage set price. The result made me sit back in my chair. $3,200 for a 4-piece set. I thought about what my friend Rose had said when she visited yesterday, about Francine's expensive luggage, about a woman who supposedly couldn't afford hotel accommodations, but carried luggage worth more than my monthly pension, a woman who was used to luxury accommodations, but needed to stay in my house for free. Something wasn't adding up. I kept digging. Social media is a wonderful thing when you're trying to understand people's real financial situation. It took me 20 minutes to find Francine's Facebook page. Photos from last month, Francine at a 5-star resort in Hawaii. Living my best life. Zumi blessed luxury travel. Photos from 2 months ago, Francine at an expensive spa. Self-care Sunday at the Ritz-Carlton. Worth every penny. Worst, treaty yourself. Photos from 3 months ago, Francine's new BMW. Finally got my dream car, Santi new car, down to luxury living well. This was a woman who couldn't afford a hotel? I scrolled further back. Restaurant photos with $100 wine bottles, shopping trips to designer stores, vacation photos from Europe, the Caribbean, and California, all posted in the last 6 months, all while she was supposedly in such financial trouble that she needed to stay in my house for free, in my bedroom, while I slept in the garage. I screenshot everything. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I called a lawyer. Davidson and Associates, emergency legal line. I need to speak with someone about tenant rights. I need to evict some people from my property today. Ma'am, are you in immediate danger? I thought about that question. Was I in danger? Not physical danger, maybe, but my dignity was dying. My self-respect was suffocating. My own sense of worth was being slowly murdered in my own home. Yes, I said, I think I am. We can have someone speak with you at 7 a.m. At 6 a.m. I made coffee. Real coffee, not the expensive organic fair trade stuff Linda insisted we needed. My coffee, in my kitchen. For what might be the last time I had to share it with people who saw me as a convenience store. At 6:30, I heard movement upstairs. Linda's alarm. She'd be down soon for her morning routine, which involved using my kitchen like her personal restaurant while barely acknowledging I existed. I sat at my table with my coffee, my printed eviction notices, my phone with the lawyer's number ready to dial, and my house deed in front of me. For the first time in 2 years, I felt like the owner of my own life. At 7 a.m. sharp, I called the lawyer. Mrs. Chen, this is David Davidson. I understand you need to remove some people from your property? My son and his wife. They've been living here for 2 years without paying rent. Now they want me to sleep in the garage so his mother-in-law can have my bedroom. Silence on the other end. Mrs. Chen, you said your bedroom? In your house? Yes. And you're 74 years old recovering from surgery? Yes. Ma'am, with all due respect, what took you so long to call me? Good question. At 7:15, I heard Linda coming downstairs. Her heels clicked on my hardwood floors like a countdown timer. At 7:30, Ryan joined her. I could hear them talking in low voices about Francine's arrival, about moving my things to the garage, about how I was being difficult about the whole situation. At 7:45, There was a knock on my door. David Davidson, attorney at law, stood on my front porch with a briefcase and a smile. "Mrs. Chen, ready to take your house back?" Behind him, I could see a van pulling into my driveway. Ace Lock and Key Services painted on the side. The locksmith was early. Perfect timing. "Linda," I called toward the kitchen. "Ryan, could you come here, please? We have visitors." I opened the door wide and smiled at my lawyer and my locksmith. "Gentlemen," I said, loud enough for Ryan and Linda to hear from the kitchen, "welcome to my house. I believe we have some work to do." The sound of chairs scraping in the kitchen told me Ryan and Linda were coming to see what was happening. They had no idea their world was about to change completely. Ryan appeared first, coffee mug in hand, looking annoyed at being interrupted during his morning routine. Linda followed, wearing the silk robe she'd bought with my credit card 3 months ago. "Mom, what's going on? Who are these people?" I handed Ryan the eviction notice. His name was typed clearly at the top in bold letters. "This is Mr. Davidson, my attorney, and this is Mike from Ace Locksmith. They're here to help me with a property matter." Ryan looked down at the paper in his hands. I watched his face change as he read the words. Confusion first, then disbelief, then anger. "What the hell is this?" "It's a 24-hour notice to vacate my property," I said calmly. "You and Linda need to be out by 8 a.m. tomorrow." Linda snatched the paper from Ryan's hands. "This is ridiculous. You can't evict family. We live here." "Actually," Mr. Davidson interrupted, stepping forward with his briefcase, "Mrs. Chen can absolutely do this. You're not tenants. You don't pay rent. You don't have a lease. You're guests who have overstayed your welcome." "Guests?" Ryan's voice was getting louder. "We're not guests. We're family. This is our home, too." "No," I said, and my voice was steadier than I'd heard it in years. "This is my home. You've been living here for free for 2 years. That ends today." The locksmith, Mike, was already examining my front door. "Ma'am, I can start with this lock and work my way around the house. Should take about 2 hours for all the doors." Wait, Linda said, her voice panicked. "You can't change the locks while we're still here. Our stuff is here. Our lives are here." "Your stuff can be packed today," Mr. Davidson said politely. "Your lives will continue somewhere else." That's when I heard car doors slamming outside. Through my front window, I could see a black Mercedes SUV in my driveway, the kind that costs more than I'd paid for my entire house 30 years ago. "Oh no," Linda whispered. "Francine's here." Perfect timing. The front door was still open, and I watched a woman in her 60s step out of the Mercedes. She was wearing a cream-colored coat that probably cost more than my monthly pension, designer sunglasses despite the cloudy morning, and she was directing a uniformed driver to unload luggage from the back. 4 pieces of Louis Vuitton luggage. The expensive set I'd researched at 5 a.m. Francine walked up my front porch steps like she owned the place, then stopped short when she saw the crowd in my doorway. "Linda, darling, what's all this? Who are these men?" "Mom," Linda said, her voice tight with panic. "There's been a misunderstanding." I stepped forward before Linda could explain anything. "You must be Francine," I said with my sweetest smile. "I'm Dorothy. Welcome to my house. I see you brought quite a bit of luggage for someone who can't afford hotel accommodations." Francine's perfectly made-up face went blank for a moment. "I beg your pardon?" "Linda told my son that you needed to stay here because you couldn't afford a hotel, but that's a beautiful Mercedes, and those are expensive bags. Louis Vuitton, right? The 4-piece set runs about $3,200. The color drained from Francine's face. "I don't see how my personal finances are any of your business." "They became my business when you decided to kick me out of my own bedroom." I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshots I'd taken at 5 a.m. "Nice photos from Hawaii last month. The Ritz-Carlton looked lovely, and that new BMW you bought in March? Beautiful car." Ryan grabbed my phone. "Mom, what are you doing?" "I'm showing everyone that your mother-in-law posts about her luxury lifestyle on Facebook while claiming she can't afford a hotel room." Mr. Davidson was taking notes on a legal pad. Mike the locksmith had started removing my front door lock, the sound of his drill cutting through the morning air. "This is insane," Ryan said. "You're embarrassing us in front of the neighbors." "I'm embarrassing you?" I looked at my son, really looked at him. "Ryan, you told me to sleep in the garage, in my own house, while recovering from surgery, so your mother-in-law could have my bedroom, and I'm the one who's embarrassing?" Mrs. Patterson from next door had appeared on her front porch, pretending to water plants while obviously listening to every word. "Dorothy," Francine said, trying to recover her composure, "I think there's been a misunderstanding. I never said I couldn't afford a hotel." "Really?" I turned to Linda. "So when you told Ryan I needed to move to the garage because Francine couldn't stay anywhere else, that was—" "I never said she couldn't afford it," Linda stammered. "I said she was used to luxury accommodations. Your house isn't— she has standards." The words hung in the air like smoke. "Your house isn't—" There it was, the truth finally out in the open. My house wasn't good enough for Francine, but it was good enough for me to sleep in the garage. "I see," I said quietly. "So my house isn't nice enough for someone with standards, but it's perfectly fine for the woman who owns it to sleep with the lawnmower." More neighbors had come outside now. Mrs. Patterson had been joined by the Johnsons from across the street. Even old Mr. Martinez was standing on his porch, arms crossed, watching the show. The locksmith's drill stopped. "First lock's done, ma'am. Moving to the back door." "Excellent, Mike, thank you." "Mom, please," Ryan said, his voice getting desperate. "Can we talk about this inside? Privately?" "We've had 2 years to talk privately, Ryan. You used that time to take my money, eat my food, run up my bills, and treat me like hired help. Today we talk publicly." Francine was frantically texting someone on her phone, probably calling for her driver to reload her luggage. Linda was crying now, but they weren't the tears of someone who felt sorry for what they'd done. They were the tears of someone who'd been caught. "Where are we supposed to go?" she sobbed. "We don't have anywhere to live." "You have several options," Mr. Davidson said, consulting his notes. "You could get your own apartment. You could stay in a hotel. Or," he looked pointedly at Francine, "you could stay with family who can afford luxury accommodations." "This is ridiculous," Francine said, her mask of politeness finally slipping completely. "Linda, I'm not staying in some budget motel because your mother-in-law has lost her mind." "Then I suggest the Mercedes has GPS," I said sweetly. "I'm sure it can direct you to the nearest 5-star hotel." That's when Ryan completely lost it. "Fine," he shouted. "Fine. You want to throw your own family out on the street? You want to die alone in this house? Go ahead. But don't come crying to us when you're sick and need help. Don't call us when you're lonely. We're done." The entire neighborhood could hear him now. Mrs. Patterson wasn't even pretending to water her plants anymore. I looked at my son. This man who had eaten my food, driven my car, spent my money, and lived in my house for 2 years. This man who thought throwing me out of my own bedroom was reasonable. This man who was now screaming at me on my own front porch because I wouldn't let him treat me like garbage anymore. "Ryan," I said, my voice calm and clear, "if the only way you'll speak to me is if I let you abuse me, then we were never really family anyway." The silence that followed was deafening. Even the locksmith had stopped drilling to listen. Mike cleared his throat. "Ma'am, should I finish the back door, or do you want me to wait?" "Please finish, Mike. I'd like my house secured as soon as possible." Francine snapped her fingers at her driver. "Put the bags back in the car. We're leaving." "But Mom," Linda started. "No, Linda, I refuse to be part of this circus. Figure out your own accommodations." Francine stalked back to her Mercedes, designer heels clicking angrily on my walkway. The black SUV pulled out of my driveway and disappeared down the street. Ryan and Linda stood on my porch, suddenly realizing they were homeless in front of half the neighborhood. "You have until tomorrow morning," I reminded them gently. 24 hours to collect your things and find somewhere else to live." "This isn't over," Ryan said through gritted teeth. "Yes," I replied, "it is." That evening, I sat in my living room for the first time in 2 years, without Linda's work papers spread across my coffee table, without Ryan's empty beer bottles on my end tables, without someone else's mess covering every surface. The silence was beautiful. My antique clock ticked peacefully on the mantel. The same clock that had belonged to my mother, that had somehow survived 2 years of Ryan and Linda treating my house like a storage unit. I made myself a cup of tea in my favorite china cup, the one I'd hidden in the back of the cabinet because Linda said it was too fancy for everyday use, in my own house. At 7 p.m., my phone rang. "Mom, please, we need to talk." Ryan's voice was different now, smaller. The anger from this morning had been replaced by something that sounded like panic. "What would you like to talk about, Ryan?" "We don't have anywhere to go. Linda's been calling hotels all day. Do you know how much they cost? $300 a night. We can't afford that." I sipped my tea and looked around my peaceful living room. "That's interesting. This morning you thought I could afford to sleep in the garage, but $300 a night is too expensive for you." "That's different, Mom. You own this house. You don't have to pay rent." "No, Ryan, I don't have to pay rent because I worked for 40 years to buy this house. Because I saved money instead of spending it on organic groceries and craft beer. Because I paid my bills instead of borrowing money I never intended to repay." Silence on the other end. "Mom, about that money. The $8,000 you borrowed yesterday?" "I can explain." "Let me guess. The investment fell through." More silence. "Ryan, there was never an investment, was there?" "Mom, I was going to pay you back." "With what money? You haven't had a steady job in 8 months. You've been living off my pension and calling it temporary." I heard him breathing heavily on the other end of the phone. "Look, Mom, maybe we made some mistakes. Maybe we got too comfortable. But throwing us out isn't the answer. We're family." There was that word again. Family. The magic word that was supposed to erase 2 years of treating me like a servant in my own home. "Ryan, do you know what I did today after you left?" "What?" "I took a nap. In my own bedroom. In my own bed. For the first time in 2 years, I didn't have to listen to Linda's conference calls through the wall. I didn't have to smell whatever expensive meal you were cooking in my kitchen without asking me. I didn't have to see my own living room rearranged to suit someone else's taste. Mom, we can change. We can do better." "You had 2 years to do better, Ryan. Instead, you did worse. You went from asking for help to demanding that I sleep in the garage. I never meant for it to sound like that." "How did you mean for it to sound? When you told your 74-year-old mother to move to the garage so your mother-in-law could have her bedroom?" No answer. "Ryan, let me ask you something. In the past 2 years, how many times have you asked me how I'm feeling?" "What do you mean?" "I mean exactly what I said. How many times have you asked about my health, my happiness, my life? How many times have you treated me like a person instead of a problem to be solved?" The silence stretched so long I thought he'd hung up. "I don't know," he finally admitted. "I do. 0. The answer is 0, Ryan. You've asked me for money, for food, for use of my car, for help with your bills, but you've never once asked if I was okay." I heard Linda's voice in the background, urgent and panicked. "Mom, Linda wants to talk to you." "Hello, Dorothy." Linda's voice was syrupy sweet, the way it got when she wanted something. "I think there's been a huge misunderstanding." "Really? What did I misunderstand?" "You think we don't appreciate you, but we do. You're like a mother to me." "Linda, if I'm like a mother to you, why did you tell me I needed less space in my own house?" "I never said that exactly." "You said I was old and needed less space anyway. You said Francine was used to luxury accommodations. You said the garage had heat, like that made it acceptable for a surgical patient to sleep there." "Dorothy, I was stressed about my mother's visit. I didn't mean it the way it sounded." "How did you mean it?" Another long pause. "Look, we can work this out. What if we paid rent? Would that make a difference?" "With what money, Linda? Ryan hasn't had a job in 8 months. You work part-time from home. You borrowed $8,000 from me yesterday. Where exactly would rent money come from?" We could figure something out. You've had 2 years to figure something out. Instead, you figured out how to spend my money, eat my food, use my utilities, and treat me like the help. That's not fair. You know it's not fair, Linda, having surgery and being told to recover in a garage while someone who owns a Mercedes uses your bedroom. I heard them talking to each other in the background, urgent whispers I couldn't quite make out. Dorothy, Linda came back on the phone. What if we apologized? What if we promised to do better? Linda, I'm 74 years old. I don't have time for promises anymore. I only have time for reality. And the reality is that you two have shown me exactly who you are when you think you can get away with it. People can change. Yes, they can, but they usually don't, especially when changing means giving up free rent, free food, and a free maid service. The phone went quiet again. So that's it? Ryan's voice was back, and now he sounded angry again. You're really going to throw us out? Ryan, I'm not throwing you out. I'm declining to continue subsidizing your lifestyle while you treat me like garbage. Fine, but don't expect us to come running when you need help. Don't call us when you get sick again. Don't expect us to take care of you when you're really old. The threat was clear. Take care of us, or we'll abandon you when you need us most. I looked around my peaceful living room, my clean coffee table, my own television remote in its proper place, my house, quiet and calm for the first time in 2 years. Ryan, I said softly, if the only reason you'd take care of me is because I let you use me, then you were never going to take care of me anyway. I hung up the phone and turned it off. The silence that followed was the most beautiful sound I'd heard in years. At 9 p.m., I did something I hadn't done in 2 years. I ran a bath in my own bathtub without asking permission. I used my expensive bath salts, the ones Linda always said were too wasteful for every day. I soaked in hot water until my surgical pain eased and my shoulders relaxed. I put on my favorite pajamas, the soft cotton ones I'd hidden in my closet because Linda said they made me look frumpy in my own house. I made myself a snack in my own kitchen without checking if I was using ingredients someone else had claimed. I ate at my own table without listening to someone else's phone conversation or television show. At 10 p.m., I sat in my favorite chair with a book I'd been trying to read for months but never could because someone always needed something, always had an emergency, always had a crisis that somehow became my responsibility to solve. For the first time in 2 years, the only person I had to take care of was myself. My phone buzzed. A text message from a number I didn't recognize. Dorothy, this is Francine. I want you to know that your behavior today was disgraceful. Linda and Ryan are good people who were trying to help family. You should be ashamed of yourself. I stared at the message for a moment, then typed back, Francine, good people don't kick 74-year-old surgery patients out of their own bedrooms. They also don't lie about being unable to afford hotels while posting photos of luxury vacations on Facebook. Have a lovely evening in your 5-star accommodations. I blocked the number. At 11 p.m., I walked through my house one more time before bed. My house, where every room was mine again, where I could put things where I wanted them, where I could eat what I wanted, watch what I wanted, sleep where I wanted, where I could live like a human being instead of a convenience store. Tomorrow, Ryan and Linda would have to pack their things and leave. Tomorrow, I would start the rest of my life in a house that felt like home again, instead of a place where I was tolerated. Tomorrow, I would wake up as Dorothy Chen, homeowner instead of Dorothy Chen, live-in servant. I turned off the lights and went to my bedroom, with my bed, my pillows, my nightstand, my reading lamp. For the first time in 2 years, I fell asleep without listening to other people's noise through the walls. I slept better than I had since the day Ryan first showed up with his suitcase and his promises that everything would be temporary. Some things, I realized, are only temporary if you make them temporary. The rest become permanent the moment you stop fighting for yourself. 3 months later, I'm sitting in my garden with my morning coffee watching the roses bloom that I replanted after Linda decided they were too old-fashioned for the front yard. my roses, in my yard, around my house. Ryan calls sometimes. Brief, awkward conversations where he asks how I'm doing but doesn't really listen to the answer. He never asks for money anymore, which tells me he's learned the answer would be no. Linda doesn't call at all. Francine sent me a friend request on Facebook. I declined it. My friend Rose stops by twice a week. We drink tea and talk about books, travel, politics, life. All the conversations I couldn't have for 2 years because every conversation in my house was about Ryan and Linda's problems. My neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, brought me a casserole last week just to be kind. She said she was proud of me for standing up for myself. She said she'd been worried about me but didn't know how to help. "You looked so tired all the time," she told me, "like you were carrying the weight of the world." I was. I was carrying the weight of 2 grown adults who had forgotten how to carry themselves. The house is quiet now, but it's not lonely. There's a difference between being alone and being used. I spent 2 years surrounded by people who treated me like furniture. Now I'm alone with people who treat me like a human being when they visit. I've learned something important at 74 years old. Respect isn't something you give away to earn love. Respect is something you demand to keep your dignity. Good families don't ask you to choose between helping them and helping yourself. Good families don't measure your worth by your usefulness. Good families don't threaten to abandon you if you stop letting them take advantage of you. And if they do, then they were never really family at all. They were just people who shared your DNA and happened to find you convenient. 6 months after that day, something happened that I never expected. I was in my garden planting new tulip bulbs for spring when a car pulled into my driveway. Not Ryan's car, a car I didn't recognize. A young woman got out, maybe 30 years old, with dark circles under her eyes and the same defeated posture I remembered seeing in my own mirror 2 years ago. "Excuse me," she called from the sidewalk. "Are you Dorothy Chen?" "Yes, I am." "My name is Amanda. I got your number from Mrs. Patterson next door. She said you might understand my situation." I set down my gardening spade and really looked at this young woman. Her clothes were nice but wrinkled, like she'd been sleeping in them. Her hands were shaking slightly. "What kind of situation, dear?" "It's my mother-in-law. She moved in 6 months ago, just temporarily," she said, "but now she's taken over everything. My husband says I'm being selfish for wanting her to leave. That family comes first." The words hit me like an echo from my own past. "Would you like to come in for some tea?" We sat in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd planned my escape at 3 a.m. Amanda told me her story. It was different from mine, but the core was the same. A woman being made to feel guilty for wanting dignity in her own home. "She criticizes everything I do," Amanda said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The way I cook, the way I clean, the way I dress. She tells my husband I'm not good enough for him, and he's starting to believe her." "How long did you say she's been there?" 6 months, but it feels like 6 years. I poured her another cup of tea and sat back down. "Amanda, can I tell you something? 2 years ago, I was exactly where you are now. I felt trapped in my own home, invisible in my own life." "What did you do?" I told her my story, all of it. The years of being useful instead of valued. The morning Ryan told me to sleep in the garage. The 3 a.m. planning session. The eviction. The aftermath. Amanda listened with wide eyes, occasionally nodding like she recognized herself in my words. "But wasn't it scary? Standing up to family like that?" "Terrifying," I admitted. "But you know what was scarier? The thought of spending the rest of my life as a stranger in my own home. I don't know if I'm strong enough." I reached across the table and took her hand. "Amanda, I'm going to tell you something my friend Rose told me. You don't have to be strong enough to change your whole life in one day. You just have to be strong enough to take the first step." "What was your first step?" "Research. Learning what rights I had. Understanding that being family doesn't give people the right to abuse your generosity." I gave Amanda my lawyer's business card. I gave her the name of the locksmith. I gave her a copy of the tenant rights information I'd printed out that night. Most importantly, I gave her something I wished I'd had 2 years earlier. Amanda, you're not alone, and you're not crazy, and you deserve to be comfortable in your own home. She left an hour later, but not before giving me the tightest hug I'd received in years. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for showing me it's possible." 3 weeks later, Amanda called me. "Dorothy, I did it. I gave her notice to leave. She's furious and my husband is angry, but I did it. How do you feel?" "Scared, but also free." That phone call taught me something important. Sometimes the best thing you can do with a painful experience is use it to help someone else avoid the same pain. Mrs. Patterson had been right to send Amanda to me, not because I had all the answers, but because I had proof that the answers existed, that women didn't have to accept being treated badly just because the people treating them badly were family. That respect wasn't selfish. It was necessary, that it's never too late to remember who you were before you became useful to everyone else. Now I have a new routine. Once a week, Mrs. Patterson and I meet for coffee. We've become unofficial counselors for women in the neighborhood who find themselves in situations they don't know how to escape. The woman whose adult daughter moved back home and turned her into a live-in babysitter. The grandmother whose son-in-law treats her house like his personal storage facility. The widow whose family only calls when they need money. We call ourselves the Dignity Club. It sounds silly, but it's not. It's revolutionary. Because for too long, women like us have been taught that our job is to make everyone else comfortable, even if it makes us miserable. We've been taught that being good means being useful. We've been taught that setting boundaries means being selfish. We've been taught that family loyalty only flows one direction. But we're learning something different now. We're learning that good people don't ask you to choose between helping them and respecting yourself. We're learning that real family wants you to be happy, not just helpful. We're learning that the people who get angry when you set boundaries are usually the people who are benefiting from you not having any. Yesterday, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting. "Mom, I've been thinking about everything that happened. I still don't understand why you had to be so dramatic about it, but Linda and I are doing okay. We got our own apartment. It's small, but it's ours. Maybe someday we can try again. Ryan." I read the letter twice, then put it in my desk drawer. Maybe someday we can try again. Maybe. But only if he learns the difference between wanting a relationship and wanting a service provider. Only if he understands that love isn't measured by how much inconvenience you're willing to accept. Only if he realizes that mothers are people too, with feelings and needs and limits. Until then, I'll be here in my house, my quiet, peaceful, respectful house, planting gardens and reading books and helping other women remember that they deserve better than being useful, that they deserve to be valued, that they deserve to be home. A house becomes a home when it's filled with respect, not relatives who see you as a convenience store. If your own family treats your home like their personal hotel, remember, you're the manager, not the maid. And managers have the right to evict guests who don't follow the rules, even family guests. Especially family guests. If you enjoyed my story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can write more stories like this. Thanks a lot in advance. What about you? What would you do in this person's shoes? I'd really love to hear your thoughts, so drop them in the comments. I'm always curious to know what you think. Oh, and let me know where you've heard this story. If you want to hear more life stories like this, like the video and subscribe to my channel. There are many more waiting for you. Big hugs, and see you next time.